very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation.
As you can see, California is on fire. Or just having fun, in the words of the mainstream media. And California will continue to be on fire forever, because California is no longer truly a willing part of the United States of America. A statement that may seem somewhat hyperbolic. California still flies the US flag, right? Well, sort of. They also fly the pride flag from the Capitol building. And the streets of San Francisco looked like an occupied colony back in November of 2023. And today, of course, the Mexican flag is by far the most prominent symbol in California. This is hardly surprising, seeing as the majority populace of California are Latin Americans. And since the white people are no longer the majority of California, this of course means that it is the most diverse state in the Union. But there is the core and key question. The Union. Is California truly a willing and cooperative member of the United States of America? Give that question serious consideration for a few moments as you take into consideration the cause for this latest round of riots. ICE moves in to start deporting illegal immigrants in California, of which there are a lot, with estimates ranging from 2 to 6 million or more. These people are obviously, definitionally, criminal individuals. They live in the nation in violation of its laws. But when federal officers then attempt to enforce those laws, the majority Latino population of California, with support from Californian politicians, mobilize to block the United States' efforts to apply those laws. This alone would be at the very least an act of spontaneous insurrection, and should be viewed as an incredibly worrying sign in and of itself. After all, if the day-to-day operations of legal agents can be blocked by the massed majority of a state, that quite clearly suggests that the state is no longer a willing participant in the legal system of the Union. But the case in California is so much worse than that, because this is an ethnic, political, and national disagreement rather than a legal one. The rioters are not disputing some point of procedure or quibbling over jurisdiction. They are rejecting the federal government's authority to enforce immigration laws in total. And they are doing so, they make it very clear, because they are protecting their own from the other. This is why even the legal Mexicans are waving Mexican flags. It is to demonstrate that as far as they are concerned, their identity as Mexicans are far more important to them than the piece of paper they own that legally makes them American. To them, their fellow Latinos are their own, and the agents of the United States are the other. This is, quite simply put, an anti-American movement. And we can further see the anti-American nature of it with whom they chose to ally themselves with. We see protesters wearing the Palestine scarf, itself a sign of anti-Westernism, and decidedly non-America friendly. We can see avowed socialists like Hassan Piker on the streets urging on the protesters. And we can even see politicians calling for these riots to take place in other states as well, explicitly on behalf of the non-American communities in the Union. It seems to me to be elevated well beyond any reasonable doubt, then, that this is a coalition of forces whose primary unifying principle is opposition to the United States of America. Furthermore, the primary demands of this coalition is to be allowed to bring in an unlimited number of fellow anti-Americans. To paraphrase an old saying here, if it looks like a foreign combatant, behaves like a foreign combatant, and recites Marx in Spanish, well, how much more evidence do you need before everyone accepts that this is a rebellion? But, of course, mind you, a rebellion in modern terms. See, the reason I call this a rebellion is because whilst it is not an armed military insurrection against the US government, yet, it is only not that because that is impossible. If the population of California could successfully revolt, at this point I believe they would. But since they cannot, they must rebel in the modern-day democratic way. Step one, obviously, is to fill the state with foreign nationals who hold allegiance first and foremost to other nations. And again, regardless of any piece of paper that declare these people to be Americans, they are, obviously, self-declaredly so, not Americans. This new majority is then used to influence the naive Western idea of democracy into destroying itself, by voting for more and more liberal politicians and policies that bring in more and more anti-American groups and empower them to further solidify their hold on power. And if the Union attempts to intervene by, say, enforcing its laws against uncontrolled, massed illegal immigration, then force, in the form of massed riots and civil disobedience and unrest, is used to block these efforts. At this point, the rebellion has already all but succeeded. With the apparatus of the state itself already in the hands of malignant actors, there will be no end to the diversity of the state. And with no federal intervention possible due to the mass risings of the Latino majority to protect their own, it is all just a question of time until California is American in name and name alone. This is another reason why I call it a rebellion. Because once the problem has come this far, the only possible remedy is force. There is no democratic, legal solution to this rebellion. For the simple reason that California is already hostile territory, and any actions you take against it is only going to make it more hostile, as it cements yet further in the minds of its population that they are their own group, and that the others are coming to get them. Worse still is the fact that there is no democratic or legal solution to the spread of this rebellion either, as even now we see people moving away from California en masse and bringing their politics with them. As the numbers of Californians, heavy quotation marks, grow, primarily through the southern border, the numbers of technically legal Americans streaming into the rest of the US will also increase. And California will remain thus a clump of disharmonious cells, pumping diversity into the rest of America. And no, as tempting as it may sound, kicking California out of the Union, even if it could be done, would solve nothing. It will simply become more Mexico. You know, the place they fled from to begin with. Why, therefore, should one ever assume that they wouldn't simply flee from more Mexico? As distasteful as it may be, the only way to fix this problem is to make California an American state once again. And that does mean depriving the foreign sympathizers of their paper shields of claimed, but not practiced or embraced, nationality. Now, of course, denaturalization is an extreme solution, and not one that should normally be desired, as the abusive potential of giving the government powers to revoke a person's citizenship is obvious to all. However, to steal one of the few worthwhile quotes ever attributed to Abraham Lincoln, a house divided against itself cannot stand. And no house could ever be more divided than one in which the very citizens are openly rebelling against it. And, furthermore, a rebellious citizen is, of course, no citizen at all, as by definition, a citizen is not just someone that is entitled to the privileges and protections of a nation, but also, a fact we all too often forget, someone that owes allegiance and loyalty to that nation in return for those privileges. Which leaves us all with a very simple question here at the end. Are these people upholding their duty of allegiance to the United States of America?